Today we shall discuss about the physical features of India. India is a land where you find different diversified relief features. Himalayas, where the climate is extremely cold, which is covered with thick sheets of ice and the ice glaciers. When we move down towards the north, you don't find anything because it comes under the border region. When we move down towards the south of the Himalayas, you find a plain land, the Indo-Gangetic plain. And move little bit westwards, you find a very hot land, the desert lands. In the similar way, when we move towards the northeastern states, you find flooded plains. When we move downwards, you find Aravalli mountain ranges, Chota Nagpur plateau region, and move completely downwards in the peninsular part, you find the Deccan Plateau region. So, on the borders of the Deccan Plateau, you also find eastern Ghats and the western Ghats, the eastern coastal plains as well as the western coastal plains. So, all these together gives us a picture that India is a land which has diversified features. This diversified features made India to acquire a unique place in all the countries or in the world. Now, understanding India's geographical features, let us now call it rightly as the land of diversity. The reason for India having so many different diversified features of land or the plains, the plateaus, all these reveals for us that these all happened because of the geological formations which happened in the process of geological study. When we look at that one, after millions of years, many changes happened between the plates of the earth, the upper plates of the earth, and resulted in the formation of these higher elevated lands, the so-called Himalayas, mountains, and the lower level lands called plain lands. So now, according to the theory given by Alfred Wegener, the most accepted theory for the formation of the land masses is the theory of plate tectonics. This theory reveals that the entire earth has 7 major plates and many minor plates. These plates move towards each other, sometimes collide with each other, and sometimes they move apart from each other, forming different landforms at different places. So, in order to understand this one, what is the reason? Why does the plates move? The plates move because of the internal stress which has been present in the plates for millions of years, which make the plates to move towards the other plate. In this process of moving towards the other plates, we have different formations happening. Those are folding. The folding will happen when the two plates come closer. You find the folding of the landmass or anything which is present between that particular plates may get compressed. This compression is called folding. And then we find faulting. When we find the two plates moving apart from each other, you find the disturbance in the landmass, that is called faulting. And we also find sometimes land masses formed when there is a volcanic eruption happening, and when the volcano gets erupted outside, then automatically the entire landmass will be filled with the lava, resulting in the formation of a plateau land or a fertile plain land. Sometimes it may also form a volcanic lava mountain land also. So, all these reveals for us that the plates move in 3 different directions. 1, the plates converge one over the other, that is called one plate moving above the other plate is called convergent boundary or convergent movement. The second moment, when one plate moves away from the other plate, that is called divergent movement. They are moving diversely, differently towards each other. And the third moment is called the transform movement. This transform movement will change the momentum. Like this, the plates is the basic reason for the formation of the different landforms in India. Now, let us go in detail to understand how the different landforms of India, especially the remarkable land boundary of India, that is Himalayas, which has been stretched in more than 5 lakh square kilometers, how it came into existence, what are the changes in these plates resulted in the formation of the Himalayas, then the plains, then the other landforms what we have, we shall discuss detailedly in this lesson. Let us now see how the Himalayas and the Peninsular Plateau as well as the northern plains have come into existence or are formed. This was according to the theory of the tectonic plates, which was described and explained by Alfred Wegener. So, he explained that the entire plates, the 7 major plates which are present in the entire landmass, which were divided like that. So, the Gondwana land and the Eurasian land plates have collided with each other, resulted in the formation of the Himalayas as well as the northern plain. In order to throw light on exactly what happened, let us look into the details now. So, the Gondwana land is comprising of the plates of the present day countries which are located are India, Australia, South Africa, South America and Antarctica together was once the Gondwana land. This Gondwana land got split itself by the conventional currents which have come towards the internal land masses reactions and broke them into the Indo-Australian plates. Now, this plate was tilted towards the northern drift and it's moving towards the northern direction. So, on the northern direction, we have the Eurasian plate, which is comprising of Asia and the European land masses of the present day. So, when the Gondwana land plate is moving towards the Eurasian plate, which is already in the northern side, so this Gondwana land is moving towards the northern plate. So, in the middle we have the geosyncline, the sedimentary rocks which are already present there, filled with the Tethys Sea, was started to get pressurized by the movement of the Gondwana land towards the Eurasian plate, which is like the Gondwana land is moving towards the northern part while the Eurasian plate is already present there, and in the middle we have the geosyncline, the Tethys Sea. So, they got it to get compressed and pressurized. So, automatically the rocks which are present inside in the sedimentary rocks, which started to get buckled up and raise up as the mountainous plains, and the water which is present in the Tethys Sea, the geosyncline procedure happened there, and it took many millions of years, and finally it proved the formation of the Himalayas. So, when the Himalayas were being formed and this land has been moved towards the Eurasian plate, finally we have a large basin, a northern flank which has been formed on the Gondwana land. This Gondwana land, large basin which has been formed, was filled with the deposits which were brought by the rivers which started to originate from the Himalayan region, and that region got filled with the fertile soil which has been eroded or brought by the soil erosion process which happened because of these rivers. So, that resulted in the formation of the northern plains. So, the Himalayas have come up with the reactions or the movements of the plates which happened between the Gondwana and the Eurasian plate, resulting in the buckling up or the compression of the Tethys Sea as well as the sedimentary rocks which are present in that, and finally a large basin has been created. The rivers which start to flow from the Himalayas brought a larger soil erosion happened, and this eroded soil got deposited in the plain lands, resulting in the northern plains. So, we have Himalayas which are made up of the sedimentary rocks and the Tethys Sea. Then the northern plains which are also formed because of the movement of the rivers which are moving from the Himalayas towards the south of the Himalayas, that is the plain lands, which are filled with the alluvial soil. And when we talk about the peninsular part of India, this is the oldest part which has been found with the igneous and the metamorphic rocks because of the volcanic activity which happened many millions of years. So, if you look at the formation of the Himalayas, these are the youngest folded mountains which came into existence for us, and even the northern plain also is very young activity, we can say, in the words of the geological experts. In the similar way, Peninsular Plateau is the oldest landform what we have for us. So, the active or the young parts are the Himalayas and the northern plains, while the oldest parts are the Peninsular Plateau region, which can be very old when compared to the Himalayas as well as the northern plains. Now, let us understand what are the major physical divisions of India, and let us see how are they important to our country and how are they contributing to our country's progress. Now, we shall discuss how the Himalayan mountains are formed. We all know that India has 6 major physical divisions: the Himalayas, the northern plains, the Peninsular Plateau, then the Great Indian Desert, the coastal plains, and finally the islands. All together are the 6 major Indian physical divisions. Now, the first major one, the Himalayas. The Himalayan mountains are stretched over in the form of an arc from the west to the east. So, the arc from the Indus River towards the Brahmaputra River, we have it at varied shapes, varied lengths. So, let us look into detail. The arc structure which you find in the Indian map from the formation of the Jammu and Kashmir edge, western side, towards the eastern Assam region. So, the entire length, the distance is 2400 kilometers from the Jammu and Kashmir to the Arunachal Pradesh region. And in this arc, why do we call it as an arc? Because it makes a variation in the width. The width is 400 meters when it is in the Jammu and Kashmir region, while it's moving towards the east, it is having reducing its width to 150 meters. So, the shape turns down towards there. So, 400 meters to 150 meters. And the entire Himalayas, how are the Himalayas formed, we already discussed. So, now let us look into the details of how are exactly the Himalayas. The Himalaya consists of 3 major mountain ranges. There are 3 parallel ranges of mountains. Together we call them as Himalayan mountains. These Himalayan mountains are broadly categorized into 3 major categories as per their mountain parallel ranges present there. So, the first range is a very high range, a continuous series of mountains are present here. The average height here is 6000 meters, while the world's topmost peaks in the world, that is the Mount Everest with 8848 meters, while the Mount Everest is present in Nepal region. So, we cannot consider it as an Indian mountain. So, we need to take the second mountain peak which is present in Indian land, that is the Kanchenjunga or mountain K2, which is 8588 meters tall, which is India's tallest mountain range and the world's second tallest mountain range. And we also have here continuous series of mountains which are connected as a chain. When we move on to the second mountain ranges which are present are known as Himachal. The Himachal, the average height of the mountain ranges which are present here are 3700 to 4500 meters, and in this the special feature is in this region we have the Pir Panjal range, which is a very large continuous chain of mountains. Here we don't find the continuous chain of mountains as we find in the Himadri region, and here we also find very beautiful valleys which attract millions of people towards Kashmir. We find here the different ranges of mountains also, starting with the Pir Panjal range, Dauladhar range and the Mahabharat range are the famous ranges, while the valleys are Kashmir, Kangra and the Kulu valleys are the most beautiful scenic beauties of this region. And moving towards the width, here we have 50 kilometers of width in the Himachal region. And moving on towards the last but not the least mountain ranges, that is the outer Himalayas, where their average is just 900 to 1100 meters and their width also varies from 10 kilometers to 50 kilometers, where you find here different dunes. The special attraction of our outer Himalayas is they are uncontinuous mountain ranges. They are very small. The average height is very less when compared to Himatri or Himachal. And here the most beautiful places are the Dehradun, the Kotli Dune and the Patli dunes. These dunes are another important attractions for the outer Himalayas. Now, in order to understand this much better, the Himalayas are also named according to the rivers which are presenting or passing through them. We have many rivers passing from Indus to Brahmaputra. Let us see what are they called regionally or locally. The region between Indus and Satluj is known as Kashmir Himalaya region. The region between Satluj and Kali Lake is known as Kaumoan Himalaya region, and the region between Kali Lake and Tista Lake, this did not form under Indian land, so it is coming in the Nepalian Himalayan region. Then from Tista to Dihang is known as Assam region. Dihang is not an Indian river, that's what the doubt many of you get. Dihang is the other name for Brahmaputra. When it is in the Tibetan region or in the China parts, we call it as Dihang. So Dihang is nothing but the other name for Brahmaputra. That's why we call it Tista to Dihang in the Assam Himalayan region. And from Brahmaputra, the entire Himalayas take a southward direction turn and enter into the Indian land again from Himalayas, the Nepal kingdom and the other regions. So here we call it as Purvachalur Himalayas, and in this Purvachalur Himalayas we have many hills known as Patkoi Hills, the Naga Hills, the Manipuri Hills and the Mijo Hills. These all together may also have different regional names for the Himalayas. So on a brief note, the Himalayas are stretched in the form of an arc. It covers a distance of 2400 kilometers. Its width varies from the west to east is 400 to 150 meters respectively, that is from Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh region. It covers an entire area of India estimated as 5 lakh square kilometers. It contains 3 major mountain ranges or parallel ranges, which is divided basing on their ranges height. So the first, the highest region is the Himadri region, where the average height of the mountains is 6000 meters, while the world's topmost peaks Mount Everest and Kanchenjunga be a part of Himadri. And the second mountain ranges, that is Himachal, ranges from 3700 to 4500 meters, and it also consists of different ranges like Pir Panjal range, Dauladhar range, Mahabharat range, and it also has very beautiful valleys like Kashmir Valley, Kangra Valley, Kulu Valley. And moving on to the third major division, that is the outer Himalayas, its height is 900 to 1100 meters and its width varies from 10 to 50 meters. Here we have world famous dunes like Dehradun, Kotli Dune and the Patli Dune. The Himalayas are also known by the rivers which are flowing through them. Basing on the rivers covering the regions, they are known locally with different names, like the region between Indus and Satluj known as Kashmir Himalayan region, the region between the Satluj and Kali known as Kauman Himalayan region, Kali and Tista rivers region, between these two rivers we call it as Nepal because these two do not flow in India. So Tista to Dihang, Dihang is the other name for Brahmaputra as I mentioned earlier, It's in the Assam border, so we call it as Assam Himalayan region. And after Brahmaputra enters into India, that is Dihang, after entering into India, the Himalayas also take a southward direction turn and enter into the Arunachal Pradesh region. So here we call them as Purvachalar Himalayan region, or these are also comprising of the hills like Patkoi Hills, Naga Hills, Manipuri Hills and the Mizoi Hills. This is an overall understanding of the Himalayas. The Northern Himalayas, the second major physical division of India, which I made a flow chart so that usually you can cover all the topics which are related to Northern Himalayas. I know that Northern Himalayas is really a very lengthy topic, but yes, we need to go with that. Now, the northern plains, sorry, not the Northern Himalayas, the northern plains which are located on the south of the Himalayas cover a very wide region. It is nearly 7 lakh square kilometers. When we discussed about the Himalayas, we discussed that it is present over 5 lakh square kilometers. But here it is larger than Himalayan region, so it covers 7 lakh square kilometers. And its length is 2400 kilometers, similar to that of the Himalayan length, while the width varies from 320 kilometers to 240 kilometers. So the northern plains covers a region of 7 lakh square kilometers, covering a length of 2400 kilometers, while the width varies from 320 kilometers to 240 kilometers. The northern plains is a very productive land which is very rich of the soil cover, which was being brought by the Himalayan rivers, as it is just at the foothills of the Shivalik mountain ranges or the outer Himalayas. So it has brought all the alluvial soil down and deposited it at the lower level. As we discussed earlier, when the formation of the Himalayas itself, there was a large basin which was being created and resulted the covering of this one. Ultimately, we got the most fertile plain land for India, that is the northern plains. So in the northern plains, the first major part is major river streams are present here because they originate in Himalayas and pass through the plain lands. First one is the river Indus, the second one river Ganga, the third one river Brahmaputra. These three are the major river streams which flow through our country and the northern plains region. Next, we also see that because of the river Indus, Indus has 5 major tributaries. Indus is divided into 5 major tributaries in the state of Punjab. That is the reason why it is known as Punjab. 5 rivers, in Hindi we call it as Panch, and Ab means the rivers joining together. Punjab region, where it is the most fertile region. And then moving on to understand, actually we feel when we say the name of northern plains, we consider that it is a very plain land and it is a flat land. But actually northern plains is not a flat land. It's not true. It is not at all a flat land. It has various variations of its land reliefs. First one, at the first level, the very narrow level, that is from 8 to 16 kilometers of width, where it is been brought from the rivers which came from the Himalayan region. At the foothills of the Shivaliks, we find the rough stones, the pebbled stones which got deposited there to 8 to 16 kilometers of a very narrow belt. This narrow belt is known as the Babar region. This is the first region in the northern plains, the first major landforms which we find in the northern plain part. Then when we move on down towards the Babar land, the rivers will be re-emerging out from the pebble stones downwards after they cross this 16 kilometers width land, and then they create a swampy and a marshy track, which is a very rough track of land which is present there. That is known as the terai land. This terai land has a huge forest cover and a variety of wild animals used to be present here before we got the partition of India and Pakistan. While India and Pakistan got partitioned, we got many people migrating from India to Pakistan, well, in the vice versa, Pakistan to India also. So as many people migrated from Pakistan to India, we need to provide an accommodation for them. So they have cleared these forest lands during that period. So most of the forests were being cleared when the Pakistan partition happened. So the second major landform what we have here is the Terai tract, and moving on to the downwards of the Terai tract, we have the terrace land which is upper than the flood plains, and here you have all the older alluvium deposited there, that is called the Bangar land. So the first land, very narrow belt and covered with pebble stones, that is Babar. After this Babar land, you find the re-emerging of the rivers, creating a swampy part and also making it a rough surface. So that region is called Terai, a marshy tract. And from then when we move downwards, we find a land which is elevated than the flood plains, which is like a terrace region that is having the older alluvium with it, that is called a Bangar land. And the last but not the least, the Kankar, the newer alluvium which was got deposited because of the movement of the rivers got brought it here, and this is a very fertile part. So this region is called Khadar or Kankar region. So we have four major landforms here, not the forms of the lands. Here we have fertility of the land also varying here. Babar, you don't have any fertile land. Terai is good, fertile. Bangar and Khadar both are good and fertile land. So the northern plain almost it has, except the narrow belt, it has the entire cover with the huge variety of the fertile plains, because basically it is located on the south of the Himalayan mountains, and the deposited soil alluvium which we got from the Himalayan rivers got deposited here. Let's have a brief recap of northern plains. That is, the northern plains existed in 7 lakh square kilometers. Its length 2400 kilometers. Its width varies from 320 kilometers to 240 kilometers. This is very productive and very rich in the soil cover of the entire Indian land. And here we have major river streams like Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra. While these brought the foothills, the alluvial soil, these rivers brought the soil towards the northern plains. And Punjab is got its name because of the Indus tributaries merging into 5 major tributaries and called it as Punjab, meaning 5 tributaries joining together here. And this is a very fertile place. The entire landmass in the northern plains has been divided into 4 major parts basing on their texture and the nature of the land. The narrow belt just below the Shivalik ranges, which is having pebble stones deposited there, that is 8 to 16 kilometers of width, that is Babar. While moving on downwards, the rivers re-originate here, allowing them coming under the Babar land and re-emerge here, creating a swampy wet lands and marshy tract. When it rains, how it creates a marshy rough surface. In a similar way, that is known as a Terai, where forest and wildlife was rich before the India and Pakistan got partition. And later we have the terrace older alluvium, which are like above than the flood plains. There is no possibility of getting any floods here much. So this is called Bangar, while we have the new alluvium getting deposited here known as Kankar, and this is also a very fertile land, and this is known as Khadar. Overall, we need to remember that it is spread over a very wide range, and the most fertile part of India is northern plains, having 3 major Himalayan rivers flowing through this one and contributing this land to be a most fertile land and very useful land for Indian agriculture. Most of the people living in these regions live or depend on agriculture. We also have many riverine lands forming up here. The world's largest riverine land, Majula, which is Brahmaputra riverine land, is the world's largest inhabited riverine land. So that is Majula. We need to remember this one. It is a very important landmark for India in the places of riverine lands. So riverine lands, the most important one we need to remember is Majula. This was been created by Brahmaputra. This is a very fertile land and many of the people are staying here very happily. So this is the largest inhabited riverine land, that is Majula. That's we have for the northern plains. Now we shall discuss about the Peninsular Plateau. The major physical divisions of India, we have discussed about the Himalayas, then we have discussed about the northern plains. Now we shall look into the Peninsular Plateau region. I have given a mind map for you so that you can cover almost all the important points what we have in regards to Peninsular Plateau. Let us start from here. Peninsular Plateau is a plateau which is like a table land. When we look at a table, how a land is very flat and a larger area is in the same level, that land resembles the Peninsular Plateau. So Peninsular Plateau is a table land and it is one of the oldest land masses which are present in India. So when we looked at the Himalayas are the youngest folded mountains. In the similar way, we have the Peninsular Plateau, the oldest land mass, and this Peninsular Plateau is formed or comprised of shallow valleys and rounded hills. Most of the places in the Peninsular Plateau we find very low depth valleys. At the same time, we find hills which are rounded or circled in shapes. The Peninsular Plateau is comprised of shallow valleys and rounded hills. So in the entire Peninsular Plateau, we find the land which is comprised of or made up of the shallow valleys, very low depth valleys, and we also have many rounded hills or circular shaped hills. And moving on to look at the formation of the Peninsular Plateau. The formation of the Peninsular Plateau is, it is a old crystalline rock structures which have been found because of the igneous and the metamorphic rocks. So the old crystalline rocks which are made up of igneous and the metamorphic rocks. Igneous are the initial stage rocks which have been bursted outside from the volcanic eruptive activity, and later we have the formation of the rocks. So these are also called as primary rocks, and later these rocks crack down and break up with the reactions and the process. Then you get the sedimentary rocks which are secondary rocks, and these sedimentary rocks go down and form the metamorphic rocks. So the igneous and the metamorphic rocks which are very strong and stable are present here. That's why the Peninsular Plateau is very strong. And here in the Peninsular Plateau we have two major regions. One is the Malwa or the Central Highland Plateau region, and the third one is the Deccan Plateau region. The Malwa Plateau region and the Deccan Plateau region. The Malwa Plateau is also known as the Central Highlands. It is located in the central part of India, surrounded by the Aravalli range, the Satpura range, Vindhya mountain ranges, and we also have on the eastern side we have the Chota Nagpur Plateau, where the Chota Nagpur Plateau is again surrounded by Garo hills, Kashi hills, and the Jaintia hills. All these reveal for us that in the central part of India, south to the northern plains, we have the location of the Malwa Plateau or the Central Highlands. Then moving on to the southwards, from the Satpura ranges onwards towards the south till the Western Ghats on the west, Eastern Ghats on the east, we have the Deccan Plateau region. Now before moving on into the Deccan Plateau region, let us learn what are the rivers that flow in these Central Highlands. The rivers that flow in the Central Highlands are the Chambal, Sindh, Betwa, Ken, and river Narmada also flows through in this Malwa Plateau region or the Central Highland region. And as we move on towards the Deccan Plateau region, the Deccan Plateau region is a triangular landmass which is consisting of the Meghalaya Hills, the Karbi Anglong Hills, and also the Northern Sarkar Hills. These hills together comprise the Deccan Plateau region, and these are bounded on both the sides by the Western Ghats, on the western direction, while Eastern Ghats on the eastern direction. And here we find it as a triangular landmass. When we look at the shape of India towards the southern side, we find a similar shape like the inverted triangular shape. That's what we call it as a triangular landmass region. In the Deccan Plateau also we find many old rocks. That is the reason why the entire Peninsular Plateau together is known as the oldest landmass. Let us learn about the Eastern Ghats and the Western Ghats. Now moving on to understand the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, which are located at the edges of the Deccan Plateau, which are running parallelly to the western coast and the eastern coast respectively. Here in the Western Ghats and in the Eastern Ghats, I made a clear division between both of them, and at the same time you can easily write the divisions. But before moving on to the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, let me tell you that here the Deccan Plateau consists of largely the black soil. As we already discussed that it's a tableland, it is formed because of the volcanic erupted activity which happened, and most of the Deccan Plateau is made up of the igneous and the metamorphic rocks which were being eroding continuously. As a heavy erosion happened, this has been got eroded heavily, so the result of this got transformed into the black soil as a larger part of the Deccan Plateau region. Now let us discuss about the Western Ghats. The Western Ghats run parallel to the western coast and they are continuous. At very few places we have the small gaps, those are known as Ghats. These are only three passes or gaps, that is Thal Ghat, Bhor Ghat and Pal Ghat. These three are the main important passes which we have in the Western Ghats, while the average height of the Western Ghats is 900 to 1600 meters, and here in the Western Ghats we experience the orographic rainfall. As we all know that in the orographic rainfall, this side we have the Arabian Sea which is on the western side of the Western Ghats. So the moisture or the water vapor which moves towards the Western Ghats will automatically move up to pass away, and which results in the cooling of the water vapor into water. So we have the leeward side and the onward side happening here in the Western Ghats. That's how the Western Ghats receives the orographic rainfall. So Western Ghats is a continuous running parallelly at the western coast of India, and the average elevation of the hills or the location of the land is here 900 to 1600 meters. So it is a bit elevated when compared to the Eastern Ghats. That is the reason why in the Eastern Ghats all the rivers in the Peninsular Plateau flow towards the eastern side, because the western side is already little bit elevated, which makes the rivers to float towards the eastern side, which are little bit slightly tilted. And then we have here orographic rainfall occurring. And moving on to understand the Eastern Ghats, the Eastern Ghats extend from Mahanandi Valley to Nilagiri Hills. So from Mahanandi Valley to the Nilagiris we find a wide stretch on along the eastern coast, but these are not continuous like the Western Ghats. They are discontinuous and they are very irregular. They are not continuous and regular like the Western Ghats. So they are completely irregular, and their average height is 600 meters to 900 meters. Here in the Eastern Ghats and in the Western Ghats we have certain peaks which are very high when compared to the other places or of their average heights. That is, the Anaimudi is the highest peak with 2695 meters, while the next is Dodabetta and Mahendragiri Hills comes at the third place. And famous hill stations in the Peninsular Plateau are Ooty and Kodaikanal. So this is about the Western Ghats as well as the Eastern Ghats. So most of the Deccan Plateau is a trap which has been created with the volcanic eruption activity, and we find hugely getting eroded over the times, and it is been completely filled with the black soil. And here almost all the rocks are igneous or the metamorphic rocks. That's how we have for the western and the eastern Ghats. Now we shall discuss about the Great Indian Desert. As I mentioned here, the Aravalli Hills. The Aravalli Hills western part, we have the location of the Great Indian Desert. The Great Indian Desert is having a special significance when it compares to the entire India's physical features. This is the region where it is different climatic condition. We find here hills which are not at all strong. Those are sand hills. The sand dunes are present here, and here the rainfall is less than 150 millimeters. Very less rainfall, and arid type of climatic condition, very low vegetation. And here we also find the river which is flowing through the desert, that is river Luni. The only river which flows through this region is river Luni, and the special feature here is we find a crescent shaped sand dunes. The crescent shaped sand dunes are given a special name called Barkans. These Barkans actually formed like a crescent when they form the sand hills. So this crescent shaped sand dunes are known as Barkans, which are very prominent in the Indian part of the Great Indian Desert, that is in the Thar Desert. And you also find most of the time the longitudinal sand dunes which are very tall and like hilly structured dunes. So these are very prominent as we move towards the Pakistan and India border region. So that is in brief about the Great Indian Desert, so called as Thar Desert. The Thar Desert is located in the western side of the Aravalli Hills, and here we find many sand dunes. The rainfall is very less. It is just less than 150 millimeters. The arid type of climatic condition and very little vegetation is possible, and river Luni flows over here. Barkans, the crescent shaped sand dunes are present, which are dominant on the Indian side. While we move on towards the border of the Pakistan, we find the longitudinal dunes which are very common in the India-Pakistan border region. That is a special place where the average population is very less. As we move on towards the Jaisalmer also, we find some population, but still we find the impact of the Great Indian Desert even in that regions. So that is the only region. It is covering nearly 2 lakh square kilometers in the Indian extent of the land area, where the Great Indian Desert is also known as Thar Desert. Thar Desert. The coastal plains, the next important physical division of India. The coastal plains are again on both the sides. Just side of the Western Ghats and just the other side of the Eastern Ghats, we have two coastal plains. While moving on to the western side first, on the western side it has been sandwiched between the Arabian Sea and the Western Ghats. So it is very narrow, and it is a very narrow strip here, and it is called with different names in different regions. The regions from Mumbai to Goa, it is known as Konkan coast, and from Goa to the Kerala region, it is known as Kannada plain, and then from there towards the downwards it is known as Malabar coast. So it is a narrow plain stretched from the Gujarat region towards the entire Kanyakumari belt, and it covers a very wide region. The only thing is it's very narrow, plain, pleasant there. And moving on to the eastern sides, it is very wide on to the Eastern Ghats to the coastal plains. There it is very wide, and it is called with different names locally in the different regions. On the northern part it is called as Northern Sarkars, and on the southern part it is known as Coromandel coast. The important attraction here is we have a lake named Chilika Lake on the eastern side, which is a very good attraction spot for many of the tourists. So the coastal plains are on both the sides of India, that is on the western side and the eastern side. The western side, they are been sandwiched between the Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea, and they are called with three different names on three different regions locally: Konkan, Kannada and Malabar coasts, while on the eastern side it is very wide, when contrary to the western side it is very narrow, and it is called with the names like Northern Sarkars and Coromandel coast. The important attraction in the eastern side is Lake Chilika. Now let us learn about the islands. So now let us move on to the last major physical division of India, that is the islands. Island is a land mass which is surrounded by water on all the sides. So now we have two major groups of islands. One is the Lakshadweep Island, the other one is the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. The Lakshadweep Islands are Lakdweep, Minicoy and the Amidive are the three important island groups which were joined together, or the major islands of the Lakshadweep Island, which were named in 1973 as the Lakshadweep Islands. Here they are extended over 32 kilometers, and the headquarters of Lakshadweep is Kavaratti. Kavaratti Island is the headquarters of the Lakshadweep Islands, and here we have an uninhabited land or island which is known as Piti, where we have a beautiful bird sanctuary where we don't find any human beings here. So the Lakshadweep Island got its name by the combination of three islands together, that is Lakadweep, Minicoy and Amidive, and together in 1973 we renamed them as Lakshadweep Islands. It is stretched over 32 kilometers of land, and the headquarters of Lakshadweep is Kavaratti, and Piti is the name of an island where we find the bird sanctuary, and it is completely uninhabited by the human beings in the Lakshadweep group of islands. Now moving on to the eastern side in the Bay of Bengal, we have large group of islands, that is the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. These are numerous and they are scattered, and these innumerable, there are many islands. It's like a rough estimation like 250 to 260 islands are present in the eastern coast of India, that is on the Bay of Bengal region. And we also have these islands are the elevated portions when the volcanic activity happened, and we have great diversity in the flora and the fauna which is present in the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. And here it is a completely equatorial region and covered with a thick forest. So that is a specialty of Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. So with this we come to the end of the 6 major physical divisions of India. Now India is a land of full potential, because when we look at the great Himalayas, where they are the source of the water resources, and from there you can build a dam on a river, and it also provides ample support for the irrigation and also for agriculture, where they act as the granaries. And moving on to the plateau lands, where they are the natural resources, abundantly blessed with the natural resources, where we can go for industrialization. Coastal plains, we can go for fishing, port activity, trading, exchange can happen. And with this we can understand that Indian great physical features provides an enormous and a significant opportunity for the India to emerge as a superpower nation, which is itself showing that there is a huge and a great future possibilities of development in our land.